Well, hello, my friends. It's been a while, hasn't it? My goodness. Well, I'm happy to be back with you guys today. As always, I am your host, Christian Watson. And again, if you have not heard of me or you have not subscribed yet, and my content seems like something you would like, then I'll ask you to subscribe, please. It means a lot to me. It helps this operation keep going so we can make sure Americans and anyone else in the world can understand politics through a philosophical, authentic, and rigid prism which will best lend themselves and best lend their understanding towards the truth and away from falsehood. And on to the topic of truth versus falsehood, let's talk about the recent distinction bestowed upon Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, the presumptive presidents and vice president of the United States, respectively. According to CNN, Time has declared them indeed the person of the year. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, this article from CNN a few days ago, named the Time Person of the Year. And the reasoning for this, for many of us who may be wondering, is quite unconvincing, just as the distinction is. The reasoning is, and I'm quoting now, for changing the American story, for showing that the forces of empathy are greater than the furies of division, for sharing a vision of healing in a grieving world, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are Time's 2020 Person of the Year, wrote Times editor-in-chief Edward Felsenthal. I hope I'm saying that correctly. So, we see immediately in the justification for the distinction the problems inherent in the distinction. Well, for one, it appends divine qualities to people who are occupying a relatively mundane position. And when I say the presidency or the executive branch is a mundane position, I mean not that it is boring. I mean it is decidedly human. It is decidedly not fascinated with things of the divine, so to speak. However, according to Time magazine, or the editor, the one editor here, and we'll get into why that's a problem in a moment, that doesn't matter. Because both of these people, by being anointed the mantle of an elected position, have A, changed the American story, B, made a sort of truce between two abstract qualities of empathy and division, and C, they have provided a roadmap to heal the world. To heal the world. All by being elected. So, of course, we understand that this is not an objective understanding, an objective criteria for an award. Now, Time magazine is not claiming to be objective in this sense, but in other senses it certainly does. Its credibility lends itself to a sort of objective reading of its pages. Its reporting lends itself to an objective reading of its pages. So I would expect, even if there is some subjectivism built into their criteria, for their award criteria to also be based on some sort of firm foundation. But this foundation it shifts, and it is as fickle as the wind, because it is predicated upon things which Biden and Harris do not have access to by virtue of the presidency. They can't change the American story, because the American story is your story. It's my story. It's our story. It's not this grand narrative that can be prodded and changed by leaders in power. The American story is our story. It is changed every time you wake up and breathe, every time you go forth to vote, every time you go forth to be a political participant, every time you go forth to have a job, every time you go forth to whatever it is, to raise kids, to get a car, to whatever it is, to graduate from college. That is the American story, and they have no license, they have no right to assume control or dominion over that story. Empathy and division also predate not only the presidency of this country, but they also predate the country itself. In many other countries, these have been forces that have been at work in human existence for a great majority of our history. And even in the beginning stages of American history, division and empathy took root in the hearts of the Federalists, the Anti-Federalists, and many other people and factionalists who tried to sculpt the American Constitution in a way that they best believe would benefit the idea of freedom. These aren't things that are subject to the whims of the presidency. These are abstract things that have no bearing on a president's proper duty, proper role, proper function. And really, this award, my main problem with this award, is that it is reflective of the culture of mass validation that consumes the Western world and really has consumed the human mind for years and years and years and years. It's sociologists talk about it a very long time, but it's manifesting in this way. Instagram models have this same kind of affliction. They have an idea that they look beautiful or they don't look beautiful, and they want to push this idea towards the masses to get their perspective on it, because guess what? Apparently, popularity confers truth, according to this line of thinking. Popularity confers truth. Mass validation confers something that should be valuable to us, to this line of thinking. It's the wrong idea. And so whether it's an Instagram model trying to get likes on their post, whether it's an OnlyFans model trying to get people to donate for them so they can prostitute their bodies out, or whether it's a president or a politician trying to get recognition to become either a cultural figure or a political force, regardless, or to become more respected, this mentality is still very toxic. Emerson said in SelfReliance, "The inmost shall indeed become the outmost when you recognize that your lot in this life is so unique, so special, so you, so brilliantly, uniquely embedded with your DNA, embedded with your substance, that no one else has the ability to tamper with it or take it or do it for you." But the culture of mass validation stands in stark contrast, in stark opposition to this idea, to the truth of your human condition, that you as a human being are to account for what you do, you as a human being are to account for your kind of qualities, you as a human being are the one who has control over this process. But according to Time magazine, we can append these arbitrary qualities onto people for them, and then engage in mass validation and take away from who they truly are. So that's the third problem I have with this. It is deceitful. It allows deceit to reign. Look, back in the olden days when Time magazine first came out, it was when NBC, ABC, CBS, all those places were around. They were the more preeminent sources of information. They could control what the audience and what the public saw and what it didn't see. And therefore, they can control narratives. They can control, in a sense, the understanding of concepts. They could control knowledge. He who controls language can control, in some senses, knowledge. Lenin understood this. Communists understood this, which is why a lot of communist regimes hijacked the levers of knowledge. Which is why non-communist, right-leaning people sometimes, like Bolsonaro down in Brazil, that dictator, he has hijacked education to push his arbitrary idea of values at the consequence of freedom. Because they understand, if you control that paideia, if you control the process of structuring manhood or womanhood into things or towards things that are higher, that are better, that will allow their manhood or womanhood to be refined through the process of growth that is natural to humanity, they understood that if you control that, you can control the way people think and the way they act. That same mentality is on display for us in this wretched distinction that Biden and Harris are getting. It leads to deceit. Because Time magazine, with its granular title, is able to confer such things. Well, Time magazine said it, the New York Times said it, therefore it's credible. That mentality, which thankfully is fading away, has the ability to confer deceit, and also, it takes away from what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris actually do. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris stand in stark contrast to the spirit of the American story, the American experiment, when they say they want to universalize healthcare, and therefore they have to engage in theft to do so. That's against the American story. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris stand in stark contrast to the spirit of the American experiment, when they say they want to make sure that businesses remain here and are kept here at any means necessary, which is in stark contrast to freedom of movement and property rights. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris stand in stark contrast to the American story, when they say they want to impose or they want to coordinate shutdowns, mass shutdowns, and mask mandates and all kind of things, which stand in contrast to my bodily autonomy, which is assured to me by my right to life and my life to liberty, as Locke would have said it. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are not people, especially people under the auspices of Americanism, need to be adulated for anything. They should be the scorned of the year, not the person of the year. My friends, don't allow these people, these gatekeepers, to take away your discernment. Use your discernment, as the ancient texts say, to divine the fruits. Test the fruits. And if that fruit is pure, keep it around. If that fruit is rotten, throw it out. And this fruit is quite rotten, in my opinion. Use your discernment. Understand that your story is not a grand narrative. It is the active, dynamic process of your living. And so long as you live, your story keeps getting written. They can't change it. No one can change it. You can change it, and that's it. All right, my brothers and sisters, it is so great to be with you today. I hope all of you have a good day. And as always, please, forever and eternally, stay pensive.